Welcome to the Pitch In for Baseball and Softball Webcast, episode 9. Today we've got a special panel discussion focusing on our school-based program and overall partnership with the Minnesota Twins. I'm very pleased to be joined by Twins President and CEO Dave St. Peter, Twins Manager of Community Relations and Youth Engagement Josh Ortiz, Pitch In for Baseball and Softball CEO Meredith Kim, and our Director of Operations and Partnerships, Steve Bizon. Thank you all so much for taking the time. And Meredith, can you start us off by giving a little bit of background into this partnership with the Twins organization and what we've aimed to accomplish together?
Well, I'd say the relationship really kicked off as a result of the relationship you guys have with Roy Smalley. He's, of course, a former Twin and former Pitch In for Baseball and Softball board member. But this really, the work that we're doing now really started in 2015 with the launch of the school-based program with funding from the Baseball Tomorrow Fund. Since then, the partnership has grown so much broader than that. We went from a 10-team school-based program in 2015 to more than 60 teams in the school-based program now. So the impact that we're having together on students in Minneapolis and St. Paul is amazing in of itself. But beyond that, it's grown even larger into doing a community-based glove program, what you guys are doing to distribute gloves and make sure kids have the equipment they need to play ball. And then, of course, your larger equipment grant, community equipment grant program that you're administering and managing now. We are just really pleased to be able to be part of that with you. I think that's why the partnership really works so well, is that we both have a shared vision and a goal for making sure that kids have the gear they need to play, but also just, giving kids this chance to get outside and have some moments to just be kids.
And Dave, from your perspective, what really drives this effort to provide more kids the opportunity to play baseball and softball?
Well, Kirsten, thank you for the question, and it's good to be with you all today. We're proud of our partnership with Pitch In for Baseball. I think we're all in the same business, right? At the end of the day, we're in the business of baseball, and we view baseball as not only the greatest sport, but we think that when done correctly, we think particularly at the youth levels, it brings community together, but it also teaches those kids who play the game, I think, really critical life skills that they can carry with them, forever. Whether it being part of a team, whether it's understanding and learning some of the nuances of the game, a game that is, just playing catch requires some type of a partnership, right? But then just everything else that goes into baseball. So we think that, at the end of the day, the growth of our game is absolutely critical. We can't do that alone here in the upper Midwest. We need partners. And we're blessed to have a number of active partners in that space. And Pitch In for Baseball has proven to be one of the more impactful partners that we've been able to add to our team here over the course of the last 5 years. And the growth we've seen with the school-based program here within the public schools across the Twin Cities and beyond has been nothing short of amazing. And we think there's continued growth opportunities, frankly, over the course of the next 5 years, and just know that we're committed to that.
Josh, what has been the response that you've received from the coaches that you've worked with in the school-based program?
Well, first off, Kirsten, thanks for having me today, me and Dave and Meredith and Steve. It's always great to see you. The response has been tremendous. We have coaches tell us that, look, without this, we're getting, secondhand stuff from people, and our kids are playing with hand-me-down things, and when we show up to play, some of these other schools, the kids, quite frankly, can be embarrassed with some of the equipment they have compared to some of their opponents. But when we're able to put brand new stuff in the hands of these high school players, it builds a sense of ownership of their program, a sense of pride that now when they're showing up to play, some other schools, they have the same stuff. Like, they have the same bats, they have the same gloves, and it's a boost in morale for those kids. And it's also just the fact that we're putting brand new equipment into kids' hands and providing access and opportunity to some of this stuff it's tremendous. And so we all know school budgets continue to be tough, especially in some urban districts. And for us to be able to come in and partner with you and partner with those schools to close the gap on things like equipment, it's super powerful. And we hear from the kids and the coaches that they're just ever grateful that we're able to work together to do this.
And Steve, I want to bring you in on that from the pitching for baseball and softball side as well. What can you share about your experience working with the coaches and what they've had to say about the program?
Yes, Josh is 100% correct. I think grateful is, the best word to describe this. The coaches will reach out to me personally and just email me after the distribution and say how much of an impact the gear is going to make on the program. Josh, you're right again with, they were using, gear that was falling apart and they're showing up to play another school, and it's a killer to their morale to show up and feel like they won't even be able to compete. And they were also not able to play safely with some of that gear. So this has been huge for them. And as you said, budgets get cut almost every year, and sports a lot of times they're the first to go. I've had coaches tell me that if it wasn't for the partnership they have with you guys and us, that they wouldn't exist anymore. They wouldn't be able to have a program. So they're just so grateful. And, now that we've been working with them for over 5 years, a lot of the contacts have stayed the same. It's just a great relationship that we have with them. And they're just so grateful.
In addition to the school-based program, the last few years, we've also worked with Wilson Sporting Goods to design and send branded gloves to the Twins RBI program. Josh, can you just describe what it's like when you're giving out these gloves to the kids and what their reactions are?
The best way for me to describe it is to ask anybody who's watching this to go back in time and remember what it was like when they got their first glove. For me, it's reliving that over and over and over year after year. Because I remember when I got mine, and it was like I slept in my bed with me. It went everywhere on my hand, wherever I went, like I had it. And so to see young kids in our RBI program, ages 8 and under, get a brand new glove that's a beautiful piece of leather and has a Twins mark on it. The joy that you see it's just amazing. And then also on the parents' face too, because they get to share a really cool thing with their kid now and be able to to have them have their first glove. So the joy, I think, is probably the biggest thing when kids get them. And some kids and we get our players to give them out at these events, and a kid will get to the front of the line and just be slack-jawed staring at this major league player giving them a brand new glove. And then after that shock wears off and they walk away for a second, they're just smiling the rest of the day.
That's awesome. And Dave, I read an article recently where you mentioned that although the past year obviously is challenging, that baseball played some role in restoring a sense of normalcy for people when fans could listen to or watch the Minnesota Twins every day. Now, along those lines, a lot of kids that we serve are constantly dealing with challenges at home in their everyday lives, even during normal times. So how important is having baseball to them? How crucial is it sometimes for them to be able to have that outlet?
Well, I think we saw as much during COVID, the number of youth programs that were negatively impacted by the pandemic. And we went through a significant amount of time where kids were not playing. They were basically homebound and generally quarantining. And, it's just, for me, I equate it to the getting back to school in a classroom, having the ability to get on a diamond, to get on a basketball court, to get on a hockey rink, to get on a football field, whatever the sport might be. I think there's a growth and development opportunity that's lost when those venues or those programs are not being offered. So, for us, it's absolutely critical.
Yeah, and as you mentioned there, sports have such a huge impact on kids' lives and in youth development in so many ways that I think most people looking from the outside don't necessarily realize all the time. So even, especially during these challenging times, it's become even more important for them to have that outlet. Now, we've received a lot of great impact stories from the Minnesota school-based program over the years. One of my favorites that I read was Southwest High School had a pair of twin girls who were homeless and couldn't afford any equipment, but the school was able to give them gloves and apparel and really provided them a sense of belonging to be part of this team. Meredith, I know we've got a bunch of other great ones. Can you share some that you have come across that have been especially meaningful?
There's almost too many to choose, quite honestly, but I think one of my favorites is of this young man from Harding High School. We hear so many stories about how baseball or softball, the game, has saved a child's life. And I think this is really just a great example of just that. This young man was clearly, his teammates knew that he was struggling in his home life, and his home life was not the safest, and it was a dangerous environment to be in. On top of that, his house actually had a house fire, and the family lost all of their belongings. Baseball and and his team are truly the thing that saved his life. I mean, he already had a strained home environment, which was hard enough in itself, and then losing everything in this house fire. He also lost all of his baseball equipment. Without the donation from the twins, he would not have had the equipment he needed to come back and play that year. But in addition to that, his teammates became his rock. He came to practice every single day. He was early. He was the last or first one there, the last one to leave. And his team really became the people that he leaned on for the support. And to me, it's like the data can tell us a lot, but these anecdotes will really tell us the magic of the impact of the game on individual lives. I had the pleasure of attending last year's equipment distribution. It's oddly, Josh, I'm sure you can relate. It was the very last thing I did before we closed down and the world flipped upside down. But before that happened, those are my favorite experiences, to be able to see those kids in person, meet them, see these coaches, and hear firsthand from them the difference it makes. Coaches tell us all the time and give us the feedback, but the kids are the ones that sought me out to talk to me about how it made an impression on them that somebody cared. And that is enough, that somebody cares enough to care about them and about their future. And so that's really, aside from all the baseball and the equipment and all of that, the twins, you guys, and this partnership is giving these kids the sense that somebody cares about them. And I think that is really the winning story for me.
Steve, similarly, are there any stories that you can share that have been some of your favorites?
Yeah, there's so many, like you guys have said. But I think one of my favorite stories, from all our partnerships comes from a young girl in Minneapolis who was really just joining her softball program. And she came out and was using a plastic T-ball glove, falling apart, really not safe, not playable. She was never going to be able to get through the season with it. She received a glove through our distribution, and she actually became the Defensive Player of the Year. She won that award at her school. They sent us a photo of her with her glove and the plaque that she received. And honestly, it's one of my favorite stories of all time over my 7 years here. It's pretty much my go-to story whenever anybody asks me for one. So that's definitely one of my favorites. Just to see that, if it wasn't for the donations, she was probably going to have to use that T-ball glove, and she probably would have got discouraged and possibly quit and left the program. So the fact that she was given that opportunity and became the Defensive Player of the Year, she excelled. She not only got through the season, but she excelled at softball. So that's why that is my favorite story.
Now, Dave, what does it mean to you to hear these stories and know that the twins have had a hand in really helping these kids and giving them a positive influence in their lives?
Well, I think it makes you feel good, right? I think it's a compass a bit, tells us we're on the right track. I think our goal is to create more stories, is to build more bridges, and we know there's tremendous need that goes well beyond where we're reaching. So we need to find a way to again continue to build new partnerships, commit more resources, and ultimately grow our game.
And Josh, you've obviously had a hand in a lot of different projects with youth outreach and engagement. Do you have any memories from the projects that you've worked on beyond necessarily just the school-based program, but all the initiatives that you've been involved in with us? Do you have anything that stands out to you?
No, there's a lot, but the common theme, and I think Meredith hit on this, is when kids tell you that they're just so happy that somebody cares. That hits you pretty strong. We have, in pre-COVID and post-COVID times, we'll have 30 to 40,000 fans at Target Field. You see it behind me here, filled up, rooting on the Twins, supporting us, giving us, their love. We want to make the people and the kids of Twins territory feel that too. And we do care about them. We do care about their development. We invest in it. We're doing it through a baseball and softball lens, which I think is important. Every kid who participates, I think, in team sports or group activities as a kid can lay a more solid foundation for their development.
Another story that we were able to share with you guys recently that's pretty cool to see, and a good example of the impact that supporting kids has had in their lives. This offseason, the Twins signed a Dominican shortstop named Luis Rodriguez. He was one of the kids who, in 2012, he benefited from a donation that Pitching for Baseball and Softball made through a foundation called Via Vasquez and Linnea in the Dominican Republic. He ended up, of course, signing with the Twins, a professional contract. So he's on the verge of being able to fulfill this dream and really change his own life. Now, when you guys hear that story, Dave and Josh, what does it mean to you to know that you're helping kids have access to the game and sometimes giving them just a whole new opportunity in life?
Well, it's I think it's awesome. I think that story again, it just confirms the opportunity. Our goal isn't to create, professional players and ultimately people that are going to ultimately play for the Twins. I think it's great if that happens, right? But that isn't really the core goal as we think about our youth programming efforts. But to see it happen, I give all the credit to that young man and the investments that he's made in his own professional growth and development and physical growth and development as well, right? He's a gifted athlete. And so many of the kids that we're providing opportunities to, they're gifted in other things. They may not be gifted athletes, but that doesn't mean that playing the game isn't important. So, but it's a great story. We love it. We're going to continue to tell that story. And we obviously hope he has great success and ultimately makes his way to Target Field, because it'll even be a better story then.
Yeah, you never know what kids are going to develop into when they're playing baseball or softball or really any sport. So just to be a part of it along the way is special. And look, I encourage all kids to play, whether you're good or not, whether you strike out all the time or hit home runs all the time, just play, because it's fun. It creates teammates and lasting friendships and lasting stories and all those things. And then when we can be a part of that by providing equipment so that kids can play and they can play safely, I feel great being a part of that. And you never know who's going to be good when they're older. You just don't. So the more kids we can get playing, the more kids' lives we can impact positively. And who knows, a few of those might one day make it to Target Field. And it's not why we do it, but it would be really cool. It's really cool if and when it does happen.
Yeah, it's just another example of how giving kids an opportunity is so vital in their lives, sometimes through the baseball route, and as Dave mentioned, in other routes as well, that could inspire them to go on and do great things outside of the game. Steve, looking ahead, what are the plans for continuing this program and adapting it this year around the COVID-19 pandemic?
Right. We are just so excited to continue this partnership. It's definitely one of the highlights of our year when we get to talk to the coaches and have that distribution. So for 2021, we are planning a little bit differently. Over the past 5-6 months, as groups have started to get back onto the field and we've had those conversations with them, we realize that they're requesting 2 to 3 times as much as they normally do on a non-pandemic year. And then also the types of items that they're requesting has changed a bit. So With these new CDC guidelines, it's really restricting how players share equipment. In the past, there would be, a high school team that could share a set of 5 helmets and a set of catcher's gear, and they'd be set. With these guidelines, it doesn't really make that possible anymore. So that's why our focus for 2021 will be on items like catcher's gear and helmets, and even baseballs and softballs, because we hear from teams that are sanitizing them in between innings. So that's where our focus is this year, along with some other PPP equipment, to make sure that these kids can get back on the field safely. So that equipment could be something as simple as like some hand sanitizer or face covering. So that's kind of where we're at for 2021. We'll be working with 12 schools, both baseball and softball in each of those schools across the Minneapolis and St. Paul area. And again, we're just super excited to get that gear into those programs so that these kids can get on the field and feel some sort of normal again.
And Dave, one more for you before we wrap things up. What are some of the other ways that you're currently giving back to the Minneapolis community, and how has that changed in the last year around the pandemic?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be a focus on youth baseball and softball. And, we're, pitching for baseball is a big part of that. It's not the only part of that. We've got great partnerships with the Minneapolis and St. Paul Park boards around our RBI programming, and all kinds of other activations, whether they be youth baseball clinics or camps or our Fields for Kids program that is operated by the Twins Community Fund. All of those things are really important in our mind to the growth of our game. Beyond that, we've gone through, I think, a very significant change internally around a giving charter that has been refined and probably more focused, specifically around making sure that every kid in Twins territory has the same opportunities, whether it be for youth development, i.e. youth baseball and softball, or education. So we're very focused, again, on strategic partnerships that are aligned at having impact in that space, and trying to ensure that we're doing our part to deal with some of the disparities that exist with some of these underserved communities, and to provide, again, incremental opportunity for kids, every kid, to have the same chance to develop at the same pace. And we think that all those kids are deserving of that.
Well, Dave, Josh, Steve, and Meredith, thank you all so much for taking the time today and for all the work that you're doing to give kids the chance to play baseball and softball.
Well, thank you, Kirsten, Meredith, and Steve. We're proud of the partnership. We're excited about what 2021 can bring, but we're even great, I think, incrementally excited about what the next 5 years can bring. So we have a lot of work to do. So let's get started.
If you have new or lightly used baseball or softball equipment that you can donate to help kids play ball all over the world, please email us at info@pifbs.org and visit our website, pifbs.org.